Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you passionate about piano education and eager to delve deeper into its nuances? The Journal of Piano Research is your gateway to scholarly articles focused on the art and science of piano education, proudly presented by the Francis Clark Center for Keyboard Pedagogy. We are calling researchers and educators to contribute to the Journal of Piano Research by submitting manuscripts of original research projects. Our international publication fosters systematic scientific exploration of piano teaching, learning, and performing, and discussion across a spectrum of methodologies, from quantitative and qualitative research to ethnographic, historical, and philosophical approaches. Each issue showcases original, unpublished research that aims to elevate professional understanding, practice, and scholarship in piano pedagogy. Visit journalofpianoresearch.org to learn more about submission guidelines, current articles, and how you can contribute to the dialogue that shapes our community. Thanks for listening to the Piano Inspires podcast, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, I'm Craig Sale, Senior Editor for Piano Magazine and Director of Online Courses for the Francis Clark Center. And today I'm pleased to have as our guest Dr. Roberta Rust. She has concertized to critical acclaim, appearing in recital at prestigious concert halls worldwide and collaborating with leading ensembles. Her artistry has been enthusiastically hailed for her recordings on the Navona, Centaur, and Proton labels. She has appeared as soloist with orchestras such as the Houston Symphony and the New World Symphony. She served as artistic ambassador for the United States and was awarded a major National Endowment for the Arts grant. Rust serves as artist, faculty, piano professor, and head of the piano department at the Lynn Conservatory of Music. She's given master classes throughout the Americas and Asia. She is also a widely respected adjudicator and has served on the juries of several noted competitions. She was born in Houston, Texas, and resides in South Florida and is a Lakota descendant. She studied at the Peabody Conservatory, graduated summa cum laude from the University of Texas at Austin, and earned performer certificates in piano and German lieder from the Mozarteum in Salzburg. A student of Ivan Davis, Arthur Balsam, John Perry, and Philip Evans, she received a master's degree from the Manhattan School of Music and a doctorate from the University of Miami. So, welcome, Roberta. It's so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much.
We always like to begin these talks by going back to the beginning.
Okay.
Where it all started. How and where music and when music entered your life, and specifically the piano, but music in general too.
Well, I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I think my first musical memories were of Sunday mornings. I was raised in a devout Roman Catholic family, and in those days, Catholics had to fast for a number of hours before taking communion. So on Sunday mornings, we would go to Mass very early. Maybe it was 5:30 Mass, 6:30, very early. And then we would come home, and as my mother was cooking breakfast for us, we would listen to music on the phonograph, on the old LPs. And my dad and mother, but they had a great record collection. They loved classical music, and so we would listen to those in that period of time while she was preparing breakfast. We would get pots and pans out and drum and run around, dance or march around the living room, et cetera. So that's one of my first memories of music and how much we enjoyed it as a family. And that I began piano lessons at age 5.
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about what you remember about that beginning with the piano, about that first teacher.
I remember it very well. Her name was Laura Burris. And I was 5 years old, so I'll date myself. So this would have been in 1961. So she was 80-ish, which means she was born in the late 19th century.
Right.
So I very clearly remember the first lesson. I remember her even early on talking to me at that first lesson about, whole notes and half notes, and she had a pie chart, and but those early lessons were they're very clear in my mind. She used to talk about, wiping the keys to get tone. And I kind of really appreciate that I had a teacher, my first teacher, and I worked with her for about, I guess it was about 6 years or so, and then she passed away. But who was born in the 19th century, because her focus, when I look back on it now, was very much on sound, always on sound, on tone, how it sounded. That's why the wiping of the keys and the type of sonority that you get. That was really a part of my very early exposure to piano playing. And she, of course, was, very 19th century, early 20th century, always very well dressed, always had kind of a nice formal dress on in the lessons. I remember little doilies around, all the place. And so she was clearly from another era even then. But she also had a very human side. Another clear memory I have from that is I remember after one lesson, she decided we needed to have some ice cream. Oh, so she got one of those nice dishes of chocolate ice cream, and I still remember that. So that so she would do things like that occasionally.
Yeah, and was piano just something you did, or did you feel like a strong connection at that early stage?
For whatever reason, my parents had 4 children. I have an older brother, and there are 3 girls. I'm the oldest girl. For some reason, they chose me to be the one to, give piano lessons to. And they both grew up in South Dakota in rural settings. My father on a farm, and my mother on a ranch. And there was a old farm piano that got shipped down to Texas. We were living in Houston. And one of my aunts had it brought down and owned it. And then my dad bought it from her for $50. And it was one of these big old black uprights. Right. When I look back on it now, it was a really good quality upright. Sure. And he bought it, put it in the house. And then I was the one chosen. Okay, Roberta, we'll have her take piano lessons. And so that's when I started with Mrs. Burris. And she felt I was gifted. And I remember there were times, particularly in the summers in those early years, she'd give me 2 and 3 lessons a week, which was great. But I'm also so grateful now to my mother for schlepping me over, piano lessons 2 and 3 times a week. Right. But she, felt that I had gift to, to really develop.
Yeah. So then you mentioned that she passed away. And then you switched to another teacher to finish out your
then I studied
years.
for this will be still in when I was a kid. Then there was about a year I didn't study. My mother just didn't get around to finding a new teacher, and I started to study the cello in schools. I was like in the 6th grade, and in those days, and still the case in Texas, which has still got very good support for public school music, but they would provide you with a cello or viola if you chose one of those instruments. If you played the violin, you had to get your own.
Right.
So the school provided me with a cello. So I started playing cello in the 6th grade and enjoyed that very much and did well with that. I also kind of started taking up the guitar myself. I got one of those, was it Melbay books and with all the chords. And so I taught myself all the different chords, major and minor chords, etc. So I couldn't read it, but I could do that. And I played in a garage band, for quite a while, through junior high school and high school. My brother had a garage band. So I had other musical outlet. But about a year or two after my Mrs. Burris passed away, my mother had me get started with another teacher, a man named Herbert Telchik, who had studied at the Juilliard School. And I worked with him a couple years. That was the first place I did a little bit of teaching. He had, I was probably by this time 13 or 14. He would teach students privately, and then he would have kind of group piano lessons. And then in the group piano lessons, he would then have those students go with a student teacher for say 10 or 15 minutes. Sure. So that was my beginning of teaching. So I would be one of the student teachers that would assist him in that. Wonderful. Then I began studying the last 2 years, or I guess maybe the last 3 years in high school, with a man named William Chason. And Bill Chason was one of the most outstanding teachers in Houston for decades. And so those were my, my pre-college teachers.
Yeah. So by that time you were hooked, I guess, and knew you wanted to
Well,
pursue this?
in schools, I assume they still do it, all those tests, they give you at a certain point, like at the end of junior high school, aptitude test and all that. So I took all those tests and I scored very highly in mathematics, like in the 99 percentile. And so then the counselors bring you in and start talking with you because
Right.
you're 12 and what might you do in high school or college or beyond. And they said, looking from my activities and my background, they said, we recommend that you consider either mathematics or music.
Mm.
So for me, that was a no-brainer. And I said, I think I definitely would like to go toward music.
Yeah.
So I was at age 12, I pretty much decided that music would be the direction.
Uh-huh.
I'm the first professional musician in my family, so I didn't really quite know what that meant,
Right.
nor did my parents.
Uh-huh.
But they thought, well, at least she can always teach,
Oh, dear.
because they're worried about, of course, how are you going to make
Right,
a living?
right.
And so from age 12, I knew I would be a musician, most likely a pianist, though I was getting better and better at the cello.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I was developing both instruments.
So then in your college years, were there any major influences in your life at that time?
Yeah, I had many inspiring and positive influences from lots of teachers. I started at the Peabody Conservatory. I studied there with Lillian Freundlich for 2 years. I studied cello with Stephen Cates. I played in the orchestra and chamber music as well. And I also enrolled in Leon Fleischer's masterclass
nice.
courses. So I had a chance to play from him as well. Then I transferred to the University of Texas at Austin to study with John Perry, who was teaching there at that time. And then I spent a summer at the Mozarteum at the Summer Academy and studying piano with Carlo Zecchi, the great Italian pianist and conductor, and with Eric Verba, who at that time was the leading leader accompanist in Europe for vocalists, and had a course with him in German Lieder. And then I took a year off from school because I wasn't quite sure where to go next with graduate school. And I was a staff accompanist for a while at the University of Texas, Austin, because I stayed at Austin a semester. Then I went back to Houston to live with my parents for a semester as I was auditioning for graduate schools. And I, of course, needed to work. So I was employed by the Spring Branch Independent School District to be a substitute teacher. And I thought, this will be good. I can do this 1 or 2 days a week and keep my practice up and get ready for the auditions. Well, substitute teachers are in great demand. So after the day I signed up, I was called every morning 5 days a week.
Of course.
And I taught everything. I said, I put, check, I'll do anything. So from, first grade to 12th grade, occasionally I would get like a music class, like an orchestra class or conduct a band or chorus. Right. One school actually had a piano, was teaching piano, which was, great. But for the most part, it could be anything from a second grade class to a 7th grade math or you name it. I did it. But it really made me appreciate the value of a long work day. But I think one of the things that I gained from it that helped me later in my career and my life, how to handle a classroom. Because if you can handle a classroom as a substitute teacher, higher education is a piece of cake, right. Because as you know, everyone goes after the substitute. And I remember once I had a class of 60 6th graders in a choir class. Yeah. They were so difficult that the poor teacher had to take a leave of absence for a couple months. She just couldn't come back.
Oh, no.
And I did that stint for a couple weeks, and then they had different people come in and out. But it did train me. It was just kind of raw training how to handle a classroom.
Right. Right. Yeah. So then when you finished with going to school with official training like that, what were you wanting to do?
Well, after I finished my, undergraduate training, I did then move to New York. I went to the Manhattan School of Music, earned a Master of Music degree there with Arthur Balsam. And then I lived in New York for almost 10 years.
Oh my, okay.
And after I finished my studies, I was active doing international competitions. I was doing everything I could to get concerts. I made my first recording. I played a very successful New York debut, which was very favorably reviewed by the New York Times. And so that was helpful in getting other concerts, et cetera. So I lived in New York, concertized as much as I could. I also developed a private teaching studio on Long Island. I lived in Great Neck, Long Island. And I got married in 1980. And then I was professionally active with teaching and performing, recording, et cetera. And then I began thinking, maybe I would like to try to get a job in higher education. So I began to start sending out some job applications here and there. And I got to the short list at Dartmouth, and I went up there, and then I think there was another school, Holy Cross. I got to the short list. I went up there, and I did well with the interviews. I didn't get the jobs, but I liked the feel of it, and I thought, I should probably get a doctorate and really do this, do the best I can with it. So at that point, I auditioned for doctoral programs and I chose to go to the University of Miami, and so moved from New York to Florida. And I studied there with Ivan Davis. And so I did my doctorate there and was most fortunate when I graduated in 1991 from that to be offered 2 part-time positions. One was at Florida International University, and the other was at a place called the Herod Conservatory, which was a brand new school in Boca Raton that was anonymously funded and offered full tuition scholarships. It was a conservatory. It still exists. It's a conservatory for music and dance. It continues to this day as a dance conservatory, but they were also starting a music conservatory. So I was hired there part-time to teach piano literature and piano pedagogy. And then over a period of years, I was then offered a full-time position at the Herod Conservatory to take over the piano studio. I also did some music history teaching. It was a small school, so as in many small schools, one teaches a number of things. I taught chamber music. I designed what is probably one of the very first, what they call now music business courses in the United States.
Wonderful.
This would have been in 1992, and we called it a career development seminar. And I designed it and taught it for a number of years, but I do believe it was one of the first ones to be created in the country. It was even before a lot of the very established schools. They did it a few years later, but that was really one of the first ones. So that conservatory, the music division of it, was acquired by Lynn University. So, in a certain sense, I've been teaching in the same conservatory since 1991. I'm the last faculty member from the beginning of that project, that school. There was a split. The Herod Conservatory board and its anonymous donor did not want to or could not, for whatever reason, keep funding the music school. Music is, of course, very expensive. That one-on-one training. They kept the dance school going, and they're still doing great work with dance. But they were going to close the music conservatory. So Lynn University, which was right next door, which is a liberal arts college or university established in 1962, they wanted to acquire that music school because they didn't have a music school. So they took over the conservatory. And at that time, I was invited to serve administration. I served as the dean. Well, actually, the director of the Herod Conservatory Music Division its last semester, and then the dean of the Lynn Conservatory for its first year or so. Administration was not something I wanted to do long term, but I was happy to serve in this capacity at that time because I think it did help with the stability. Because of course, people were very worried about what would happen with the school. But we we made the transition well. So it is now the conservatory at Lynn University, which I have been at, since that time.
That's amazing.
Yes.
It doesn't happen that way.
It doesn't. It doesn't. But I went to Peabody those my first couple years in undergraduate studies, and at that time, even though I was a young student, I could tell there were money problems with the school. I could tell, by the facilities. I could tell by the attitude of the faculty,
Right.
the things they would say. And of course, this was before John Hopkins stepped in and kind of
right.
saved the day.
Right.
So I remembered that experience. And so then later in my own professional life, when I saw the Harrod Conservatory in trouble or the music division in trouble, then there's this university next door, Lynn University, that was very interested in acquiring it. So I remembered that. And of course, we see that in other places in the country.
Right.
And so sometimes these universities can come in and save these music schools or music conservatories that do have a very difficult time financially, sometimes keeping it all going.
Right, right. Another thought, because we've covered a long stretch of your growth, and then now you're settled in this position. Were there any obstacles or difficulties for you along the way? Musically, were there, or was it just you did it and it went on?
Well, I'll talk about this when I look back on my study time and then my professional teaching time. I won't call it an obstacle, but I did seem to have a tendency to shift schools and teachers, though I have great respect for all my teachers, every couple of years, and many people don't do that. They'll study with somebody 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, the whole life, But for some reason, I was always, okay, now I want to go study someplace else. And I spent, a couple degree programs were in public institutions, some in private institutions. But all of that experience and knowledge base well equipped me for my teaching life.
Right.
Because I've had an international studio at the conservatory at Lynn and also at Harrod. I have some domestic students, but I've had largely a large pool of international students who come from a wide variety of pianistic focus and training in all these schools of piano playing, the Russian school, the Germans, the English, the Americans, the French and all that. All of those schools of piano playing, which are still alive and well, it helped a great deal that I had so many different teachers that were really quite different. I mean, Ivan Davis was a student of Horowitz. John Perry studied with Frank Mannheimer, who was a student of Tobias Mattei. So you've got that stream. So I had these different currents of piano pedagogy going back quite a long ways, and I think that helped me a great deal as a teacher because I would have students coming, and I could identify, what type of influences and they were coming. And because, many students and many pedagogical schools of thought are very dogmatic and they often think they have the way, the truth, and the light. There's no other. So you have to deal with that. But understanding that, I think it helped set me up in a way for my professional life, but adaptable. And also empathetic and understanding of how some of these schools of playing can be quite different from one another.
Yeah. So you're able to assess and understand them more completely. And you also had a bigger toolbox too because of all those different experiences.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I think some of that also is what happens in this country with American training, in our American music schools, because we do have a wide variety of influences, culturally.
Right.
So I think it's kind of the environment is set up educationally for people to get exposure to those different influences and being open-minded about them.
Yeah. I'm curious to know then, in your adult professional life, what passions have come up for you in terms as repertoire things, teaching things. What has there been anything that's really grabbed you and you've said this is something I want to take hold of and do?
Well, there's so many different attractions in music and
Yes.
repertoire,
Right.
et cetera. And I
Mhm.
think different things hit you at different times of life.
That's true.
I remember first piece of Prokofiev I played was the D major violin sonata. And I was studying with Arthur Balsam at that time, who was one of the leading, collaborative pianists for strings in the 20th century. And he played with all the great violinists. And I never played the piece. I learned it, I studied it, I played it for him before coaching. And he sat back and he said, and he says, for some reason he picked on the second movement. He said, you approached that second movement better than anybody I know. And I was, 22 at the time. I never played this composer, but this is what we call an affinity.
Yes.
And I love Prokofiev. I wouldn't necessarily at that time have said, oh, he's one of my top 5 or
Right.
6. No. But I think the one thing that's so important to realize, not only in ourselves, but in students, is the role of the unconscious in performing and in teaching and et cetera. I think my unconscious personality probably is passionate about Prokofiev, but something's going on. So my conscious,
Yes.
person may know, if somebody says, who's your favorite? They always ask that question, right?
Right.
Well, if I had gun to my head, I would say Johann Sebastian Bach. That's my conscious,
Right.
reaction, still is to this day. Though I teach it a great deal, I really haven't performed it all that much, but it's probably, but overtly my favorite. But so you've got that. So then I started studying more and playing more Prokofiev. And then in 1991, I got a NEA grant, solo recitalist grant, to perform all Prokofiev recitals around the United States. That was my project. So I did one in Houston, one in New York, one in Newport News, Virginia, and then the fourth one, can't remember right now, but there were 4. Miami. So there was, Mr. Balsam saw that, I identified that. He said that to me. I thought about it. I thought, so then I started, tinkering with more Prokofiev, and then eventually learned quite a bit of his music. So that was one direction. Then in 1985, I won one of the prizes for the Artistic Ambassador Competition, which was something set up by USIA. These are, things that no longer exist. But it was a competition and a program to find American pianists to send abroad for basically diplomatic purposes. And I won one of the spots, and they sent me to Brazil in 1986, as well as other places in Latin America. And I was told, I found out later this was not true, but I was told by one of the American diplomats, they said, oh, we understand, because I was putting my program together, what should I play? They said, we understand that in Brazil, if you're a foreign artist, you are required to play some Brazilian music on your program. So I thought, okay, so what do we think? Well, Villalobos, okay.
Right.
So I go around, I talk to everybody I know. Anybody know anything? Oh, the Three Maries. I mean, they're, Policia. There are a few pieces people knew Villalobos. And okay, fine. So then I get a volume of his, read through a bunch of stuff. Then I picked up a couple pieces I really liked. The Choros No. 5, the Alma Brasileira, and the Dança do Índio Branco, which is the dance of the white Indian. So I like those. Those were complimentary. I learned them. My first 2 pieces of Villalobos. Great. I put them on the program that had, Beethoven and Chopin and Gershwin, whatever. There's my Villalobos. I get down to Brazil, touring around, and they always have somebody, a minder. Somebody was with me from the embassy, who was often a national, often a Brazilian. It would take me around, and I say, hey, I find this so interesting about you have this law that international artists have to play some Brazilian music in their concerts. He said, what? He said, we don't have it in law like that. Well, Then I realized that American diplomat did that because he thought it would be diplomatically a good idea for an American artist to play some Brazilian music, which I kind of agree with. But that's how I ended up first learning some Villalobos, which I then learned a lot of Villalobos. I liked it. The Brazilians liked the way I played it. I got some positive press coverage with that. And then when I was at the University of Miami, I decided I think I will make Villalobos my doctoral, my dissertation project. So I did. And so my dissertation was on some of the piano works of Villa-Lobos. I persuaded the doctoral committee to let me study Portuguese instead of the standard, German, Italian,
Right.
French, that you
Right.
usually do with the doctorate. So I said, could I please study Portuguese? Because my topic is Villa-Lobos. And at that time, my first tour in Brazil was 1986, but then I kept going back there. I had about 5 tours up through about 1995. So I got to know the country quite well, many friends, presenters, etc. And so I did my dissertation on some of the piano music of Villa-Lobos, and then I made a recording, which is on the Centaur label, of the piano music of Villa-Lobos. It includes Villa-Lobos Rural Poema, as well as the Bacanas Brasileiras, the Ciclo Brasileiro, some other wonderful pieces. So that again is that was kind of the Villa-Lobos direction, but things happened, and that's how. And then of course, then I did some other Latin American music, other Brazilian composers, because that kind of bled out. Bled out from that. I met a number of contemporary composers in Brazil on these tours. One was a man named Almeida Prado, who was one of the leading contemporary composers at that time. And I learned some of his music and did premieres of it in New York, etc. Because I've always, through my whole career, enjoyed 20th century music and new music. And ironically, I'm this celebration concert tomorrow night. I'm just thinking of this now. I'm playing some preludes of Robert Starrer. And they were composed in 1952. But the year would have been, for me, 1974. I was a freshman at Peabody, and my teacher, Mrs. Freundlich, decided I needed, something contemporary. So she gave me that. So she said, I would like you to learn these 5 preludes of Robert Starrer. So and I had my Schubert Sonata and my Beethoven, Bach, and the usual stuff. I said, okay. And so, and of course, I had heard some contemporary music, but I had never played any. So I got that Starrer score, and I started working on it. And I just, the dissonance and the whatever, I thought, I can do this too. I was so excited to make those sounds, that type of expression, that I could actually do that. So I really kind of took to it, as a duck to water. I just really, really. So that was my first memory, and I'm going to play 3 of those preludes tomorrow night.
Wonderful.
But then, of course, as I went through my career, I would gravitate toward talking with composers, getting to know composers. I've commissioned some pieces, and I often I like to try to include contemporary works in my programming. Sometimes, rarely exclusively. I mean, I like it to mix it in with everything else, So that's also been an important kind of, I think, current, in my artistic life.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think we all, as you said, you come upon something and it stirs something in you, and then that just becomes your focus for a while. And
it's amazing,
And in the end, all you've done is just expand your experiences.
It's you don't realize always when it's happening, why it's happening.
Right.
As I mentioned, if a gun to my head, I would probably say Johann Sebastian Bach is my favorite composer. But my mother passed away in 2011. And after that, over the next 5 years of my life, I was deeply gravitating again toward listening to the music of Bach. And it took me about 5 years. But, there's a Hensler box set of all Bach's works. Took me 5 years to do it, but I listened to them all. And then I attended the Oregon Bach Festival when Helmut Rilling was still conducting there and running it, and he's just fabulous. And I went out there a couple years just to audit, audit choral conducting classes, and also to watch him conduct, because I do think he's not, still active, but I do think he's absolutely one of the greatest musicians alive He's just amazing. And so I'd watch him conduct. I would watch coaching the conductors because I was so interested in that repertoire. But then he retired from there and he started Bach Cantata Academy in Weimar. And I went to that a couple times as an auditor. And what he did is he took cantatas and went to the churches that Bach actually wrote them for.
Oh, wow.
In the first church in Mühlhausen, and there's another one, Arnstadt, and so there were like 4 or 5 different locations. And that was just a fascinating experience, in this business about this clean, antiseptic, clear Bach playing that you hear most modern keyboardists play. And they say, well, this is the way it sounded then. I have to laugh. If you go to Mühlhausen, to this first church where Bach worked, and of course, Rilling's cantata forces were small chorus, small original instruments, everything is a thin sound, right?
Yeah.
You've got harmonies blending over harmony. It is the blurriest thing, it's just, there is nothing clear about it, So, and then some of the churches were clearer than others, but nothing had the cold, antiseptic, clear sound of a modern concert hall. They didn't sound like that.
Right.
So I always kind of instinctively felt that way because, often keyboardists will say, well, I always ask my students when we're doing Bach, I said, well, what do you think of when, what instrument? She said, oh, harpsichord. I said, okay, well, that's one possibility. I said, have you ever heard any of Bach's organ music?
Right.
And so I said, so for me, it's the organ music and the great choral works that are the inspiration for the sound and the messaging. But to get back to this point of what motivates or pulls us, and I look back on it, I thought it was the death of my mother.
Sure.
It was so, deeply impactful.
Yeah.
So that was that period of, at least 5 years, maybe 10. And now it's, more years since she's passed. So I'm still loving the music, but that intensity of, say, that 8-10 year period of that, it's not quite as much.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you don't know what you're going to get thrown,
Right. It's interesting how music is our profession and we create it for others, but there's also this personal component which it could be a motivation of just being interested or attracted, or in your case, just helping this grieving process.
Yeah, and you don't, and even at the time, I didn't realize it.
Didn't realize it,
because I always loved Bach. So and I've always loved choral music. I've always tend to, when listening to music, I'll tend to be gravitated toward vocal music.
Yes,
and again, I look back to my early studies at the Mozarteum, the German leader. I was very interested in accompanying singers, but I've always been a fan of opera, choral repertoire, and singers. Yes. Even the pop singer, Ella Fitzgerald, and Dionne Warwick and Barbra Streisand, and the great pop singers. It's what really appeals to me.
Yeah.
That vocal side, and I think some of that comes from. We play a very mechanical instrument that was created in the Industrial Revolution. We play this piano, which is a very mechanical thing. Yeah. And so I think that vocal component, that singing, is something that I'm always very drawn to. Not that you can't sing on the piano, of course, but it's very difficult to do.
Right. But it can be a motivation for you to make that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That, and then tying it to my first teacher with that focus with the tone. And that. So to me, tone, sound, all of this is and that's all very much tied up with the voice, which is our most basic type of musical expression. Plus, of course, rhythmic impulses.
Yeah. I'm going to ask sort of a loftier question now.
Okay.
Just about music in general, and wondering what place you feel that has in our world. What do you see the role of music as in our world, and is it to be blunt, is it something we need, or is it something that's just it's there and enjoyable for some people?
Well, I think music in our world has always been, is, and will always be. It's just part of what, the human experience. It's
Yes.
it's part of the human animal.
I agree.
And music is a metaphor, whatever time period you're in. It's a metaphor for what's going on in our lives, culture, society, the world at this time. So I think it's now, as far as you said, is it, what was that last thing you said? Is this kind of just is, or is something
it's
casual?
something that you can enjoy.
Yeah.
If you
So
want
yeah,
to.
you can enjoy. And but the great thing about music, it serves all these purposes. You can have the deep spiritual messaging of a Sebastian Bach, or you can have something much more casual.
Right.
Whatever. And the whole gamut.
Yeah.
Because you see, music is a metaphor for all of our experiences.
Mhm.
So it's all out there, So no, I think it always will be, as long as there are people, and of course we have it in nature. The
Yes,
birds,
that's right.
And the whales,
right.
and what's out there. It's a very different type of music, but it's music.
It
I
is.
think we could definitely say
Yeah.
that, particularly the
Yeah.
bird world.
All creatures have been given this ability to make their own kind of music.
Even the barking of dogs,
That's
or
right.
the meowing of cats.
Yeah.
These are.
Yeah.
This is a type of language.
Yeah. I've always found it fascinating that there's something in the human spirit that wants to express in this fashion and needs to,
Well,
and that we respond to each other.
Yeah. I think so, and I think a lot of it, when I teach ornamentation with students and trills, etc., or pagitures particularly, I said, where do you think this comes from? Why do we have a? Usually they won't say a whole lot, and I said, I think this comes from sighing
Yes.
and crying.
Mhm.
And when I explained it, I said, when you're doing a trill or any type of ornamentation, it's really it's extra notes, extra expression. The composer couldn't get it with just that one note. They had to have extra notes to make it as meaningful as they want. And it comes from, like, when you're, say, speaking about something that's very emotional, and your voice begins to shake and
Yes.
quaver, or like that. That's the beginning of ornamentation.
Ah.
So it's because it's if you're delivering a eulogy and
Right.
get overwhelmed with emotion, the voice will shake, and to me, that's ornamentation. Or the beginning of the
Right.
idea of ornamentation.
Right. That's a wonderful thought. I like that. Well, we always conclude our episodes with the same question, and that is, how does piano inspire you?
It was piano. Well, needless to say, it's just such a remarkable instrument. We are so lucky as pianists to have so many centuries of fabulous repertoire upon which to draw. It inspires me. I mean, it was the instrument that I was initially trained on and pursued to be my primary instrument. So we have that. But I think one thing that's actually promising for the future with piano, I think maybe we should broaden it and say keyboard.
Okay.
Is that, technology and computers are a keyboard. So they're not a bow. You don't blow into them like an oboe. They're a keyboard.
Yeah.
So I think this perpetuation of the keyboard as a musical instrument going into future decades and centuries is promising. So I think that should be a beacon of hope for keyboardists or pianists, that their instrument. I think the piano, as we know it today, of course we have more and more electronic pianos, et cetera, and the keyboards, but the acoustical piano, the great grand pianos, which are basically a product of the 19th and 20th centuries, I think we have to realize that probably, maybe a century from now, they're going to be still with us, but it'll be more like how we feel when we talk about organ. There are still organs, and there are organ recitals, and a few organ majors around the country. Okay, so organ is still alive and well, but it's not what it was centuries ago. So I think this will probably eventually happen with our acoustical pianos, because the amplification and the electronic delivery of music will be the dominant delivery. Look, it pretty much is for most of the world via it's popular musics.
Right.
That
Right.
most people experience music today on the planet from some type of electronic delivery system that's produced electronically. This acoustical stuff that we do a lot with our traditional piano playing, that's probably going to be less and less. And I don't think it'll go away, but it'll be less and less.
Yeah. And we'll still be seeking ways to express ourselves.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
music.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perhaps not as
The,
much
the,
with
the
that.
medium will change,
right. Right.
But this whole keyboard business with technology,
Right.
I think it'll keep a thread.
Uh-huh.
We're talking organ, harpsichord, all this stuff. You get
Right.
then the piano, and there's a thread there,
Absolutely.
a continuum
Yeah.
that you don't see with, say, for instance, your bowed instruments. Not so much as thread there.
Right.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Roberta, for taking the time to come and talk with us and
You're
share
most welcome.
your life and your thoughts with us. It was
Thank you.
very, very beautiful and interesting.
Well, thank you for the questions and the way you paced the interview. I appreciate it very much.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks a lot.
The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.